Welcome into One-on-One live on Suddenlink Channel 112, OSU Student Radio KXCY, Fire Stick, Apple TV, and Roku as well. Reed Spencer, joined by Logan Mosier, and OSU Insider for the first time this year in the football season, Robert Allen. How are you, Robert?
I'm good, guys.
It's football season,
Glad to have
so
you back. It's been a while.
It has.
it's the best time of the year,
I was
right?
about to say, when
Football
Robert's here,
season.
it's football season.
Yeah, it is a good time. In fact, last week leading up to the game up in Corvallis, I don't know. It's probably been a while. I mean, I'm even going back to the Mason Rudolph and James Washington days and all that. I think it's probably been at least 3 or 4 years since I was as fired up and looking forward to a season as I was this one. And the funny thing is, one of the reasons is it was like Christmas. You know, most of the time I know what the gifts are under the tree for me. But this year, we're starting to open it up now, and I wasn't sure what we'd get. So far, I like what I see.
Yeah, not a bad performance. Obviously, 40 minutes before game time, obviously the decision was made prior to that, but it is announced that Spencer Sanders was going to be the starter. What was your initial reaction when that news came down?
Is this where I say I knew several days ago?
Yeah.
Several days before. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Mike Gundy's really nice to us. I mean, Dave Hunziker and I get to go to practice, and the deal is we keep our mouths shut until game time. And for Dave, it's not a problem because he doesn't open his until game time. But I've got a daily show. I've got a website. Yep. So, I'm the one that gets watched more closely.
Yeah,
Mike, I'll get – every once in a while I'll get text messages from Mike Gundy or maybe Mac Butler. Somebody said, hey, remember, you can't report anything you see at practice. and so, but no, in fact, we were hoping the radio network would be the one to break it. And I mean, as soon as we saw that it was out there, and I think it came from Stadium Sports.
At least the Cowboy.
It was
the
a
news.
Cowboy, yeah.
So Brett McMurphy.
Yeah, Brett McMurphy. And that's the other bad thing. Brett and I are friends. So when that comes out, the first thing, my phone lit up. Did you tell Brett McMurphy?
Well,
and I'm like, no.
Reed and I saw him tweet that, and we were like, man, when did Robert tell him that? That's exactly what we thought.
Well, and see, I was getting that on my phone, and the first thing is, no, I didn't tell Brett McMurphy. I wanted the Cowboy Radio Network to break it.
Right.
I mean, that's one of the things we get by going to practice is now we had a time where we could break it. So, but hey, give Brett credit. He knows people here other than me, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I dang sure didn't tell him.
So there's a 52-36 victory for the Cowboys over Oregon State. Spencer Sanders was impressive, 19-24, 203 yards, 3 scores for the air. They robbed him of 1. Chuba Hubbard, 221 on the ground. But Spencer Sanders, what he did with his wheels was probably most impressive, 109 yards on 13 carries. So we'll get to Spencer Sanders in a second, but there's the flop side of this where, it is Drew Brown's not starting. So I know that Mike Gundy no one's going to tell Drew Brown, hey, you're not starting, and with a smile on their face. What was that moment like for Drew Brown, and how did he handle it?
Well, I wasn't there when he was told. I mean, practice doesn't mean I get to go behind closed doors when they're going to tell players, the information like, hey, you're not going to start. But here's the deal, guys, and I know that there's some people that after what happened on Friday night believe, no, they weren't going to play both quarterbacks. Look at what Spencer Sanders did. No, the plan was Spencer had earned the opportunity to start. The plan was at some point when they felt – now, they told Spencer, they made it very clear, look, the first time you don't get a first down, that's not when we're pulling the hook and you're coming out. We're going to do this pretty much by feel. So I kind of had in my mind, and Dave Hunziker and I had talked about it because, again, we're at practice. Last week, Drew Brown took a lot of first-team reps. I mean, they alternated. So if you had already decided Spencer Sanders was the guy, Spencer's going to take all the first-team reps and Drew takes all the second. That's not the way practice was organized. Spencer get a little bit more, yeah, because he was going to get the start. But we were kind of negotiating in our mind, when will Sean Gleason and Mike Gundy make the decision to let Drew in? And I thought if they go 2 series where they look flat, then that's a good time to put Drew in. Well, give Spencer Sanders credit. The first guy, it's like going to a public park with a basketball court with you and your two buds. Everybody's playing 3-on-3. Okay, as long as you win, you keep the court. It's your court.
King of the court.
Or if you go to, and I'm sure you guys don't do this, say you go to a tavern with pool tables.
Never in my life,
I'm
Robert.
sure you don't ever do that.
Absolutely.
But I can tell you guys, because I've been to them before, that if you're on the pool table and you keep winning, you keep playing. And then when you lose, you go to the back of the line. Well, Spencer Sanders, he evidently has played basketball in a public park because he realized, hey, as long as I keep scoring points here and moving the offense, guess what? I get to keep taking snaps. So he never relinquished it. Now, while that's going on, the important thing this kind of plays into your storyline. I kept watching Drew Brown after every series when the offense came back over. What's his body language like? Has he dropped his shoulders, dropped his head? Has he quit talking to people? And to his credit, he never did. He was congratulating Spencer or Chuba or Tylen or all of them or Landon Wolf on whatever they did. He was sitting there with Spencer on the bench when they were, being talked to about what went on in the series. He stayed very engaged, and I think the coaches noticed that. And in the end, somewhere down the line, that'll pay off for him, because one thing you don't want to do with Mike Gundy is start showing bad body language. And I think this week, hopefully, if the Cowboys do what they're supposed to, you ought to get a good dose of Drew Brown on Saturday.
Go ahead,
So,
Logan.
you mentioned it. We might see him on Saturday. Is that going to be?
I think you will see him. It just
Late in the
depends on
game?
when. No, I think that I think they still want to give him an opportunity to show what he can do, and when the game is still live. Mm-hmm. Now, are they going to put him in second or third series? No. I think Spencer Sanders, the streak. Here's the thing. Once you throw the quarterback battle into the court of, public, perception, now the public is helping to make make the decision. Now it's not just on Mike Gundy and Sean Gleason and the coaching staff. Now the public is watching these games, and let's say Saturday night Drew Brown starts. What do you think the reaction is going to be inside Boone Pickens Stadium?
An uproar.
Yeah.
What the? Has Gundy lost his mind? I mean, so Spencer Sanders went out and he earned the job with Mike Gundy. He earned the job with Sean Gleason. He earned the job with his teammates, and he earned the job with the Oklahoma State fan base. There's nothing Drew Brown can do about that. It's out of his control. Spencer Sanders had the control, and he did a really, really good job with it. Now what Drew Brown needs to do is focus, and I would say once Oklahoma State gets a commanding lead, and guys, when you start looking at this matchup, I mean, McNeese is a good FCS team. I think some people think they're a top 25 FCS team, but you start looking at the matchups, and this is a mismatch. Make no bones about it. Once Oklahoma State gets control of the game, I think Mike Gundy will be eager to get Drew Brown out there. One, he wants to keep his attitude up, and two, I think that this was a very even battle during fall camp. I think they want to see what Drew Brown's capable of. When I say it was an even battle, they threw the ball pretty close. Spencer, I think, has a little stronger arm. I think Drew at times in practice was more accurate. They both are pretty good decision makers. Both of them can move a little bit, but there's one difference. Spencer is a home run hitter with his legs. If the play breaks down or if it's a called quarterback run, Spencer Sanders' opportunity to make yards, as you guys saw Friday, is much greater than Drew. Mm-hmm. But I still think that the coaching staff wants to see Drew Brown.
Well, you talked about the fan perception, and I don't think that's ever really creeped in. That's not how Mike Gundy operates, but fans might tell themselves that their opinion matters. But Logan and I watched a game at a restaurant here in town, and every time they showed Spencer Sanders, cheers. Yeah. And that's not, and it's unfair, I guess, in a way for Drew Brown to, the perception was he's not the 4-star guy. He had to go to San Mateo Community College. He had to go to Hawaii. So he had a longer road here. But the storyline over the summer was at the beginning, hey, it's Drew Brown versus Spencer Sanders. And then it quickly turned into, hey, they're best friends, and this is best case scenario for Oklahoma State. So you talking about how Drew Brown reacted to that, because that's not easy. That's 5 years of essentially being slapped in the face with everything that she's had to work for. But that's football.
Well, and here's the other thing too is Drew has seen adversity before. This isn't his first go around with being beat out for a job or being told he's not the best guy. In fact, I kind of cut him short from the time he got here. And so this year before fall camp, I ran into him and I said, Drew, Robert Allen. He goes, I know who you are. And I said, I just want to apologize because I really never gave you a chance to win this job. And as I've watched in the spring, and then I sneak over and watch some of the summer workouts, this guy bent over backwards. I mean, he went to everything. Even the voluntary stuff he didn't have to go to. If it was just a workout for linemen, he'd show up and support the linemen. I mean, he went above and beyond. Okay, what do they call that in school with when you're greasing a teacher? It's
brown nose.
Yeah, brown nosing. You can say that. But, I mean, I think the guy was sincere. He wanted to ingrain himself with his teammates. He did a great job of it. Now, does that mean Spencer's not a good leader? No, you got a good dose of what he can do in leadership on Friday night. But, yeah, I think this team still likes Drew Brown. And I'll say this. If Spencer keeps running the ball the way he does with some hurdles and some hits, you better have Drew Brown ready to go because I hope Spencer will get a little smarter. And I understand why he did it Friday night. He was trying to seal the deal, and he did.
Yeah.
But now he needs to be a little smarter about taking hits.
Well, he led this offense to 52 points, had a remarkable performance in his first game as a Division I starter. We're going to take a quick break, come back and talk about what the rest of the offense did in a 52-36 win over Oregon State. Right back on One on One.
What is it about Oklahoma State?
This place is special.
Believe me, I know.
It's my home.
I've spent more of my life at OSU than away from it.
So here's what I can tell you.
There's just something about Oklahoma State.
We've had some pretty remarkable people pass through these walls.
People like Henry Ivan, Ed Gallagher,
Robin Ventura and Barry Sanders.
I could go on and on about our All-Americans
our national champions,
and our Hall of Famers.
You could say the people are what make this place special, and you'd be correct.
but it goes beyond the people.
There's something else about Stillwater that attracts greatness.
Maybe it's the hard work that all of us have put in during our time here to make something of ourselves.
Maybe it's the trials we've endured as a family.
We've been tested in ways that most people cannot understand.
Yet we never waver
In who we are,
And what we believe in.
We've proven we can win at the highest level.
But winning isn't the only reason why people choose Oklahoma State.
It's more than that.
Our fans don't just cheer for the Cowboys.
They are the Cowboys.
The culture here is bigger than all of us.
it means something to be a Cowboy.
It's the values OSU stands for.
The values of being loyal and true.
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 Welcome back into One-on-One. Reed Spencer, Robert Allen, and Logan Mosier here. We're going to break down the offensive performance. We talked about how incredible Spencer Sanders was, but 555 yards of total offense for the Cowboys, and they mauled Oregon State up front. I mean, Chuba Hubbard had quite the day. Again, 221 yards on the ground for Chuba. How impressed were you with the offense Friday night?
I was really impressed. I you know what? If you say you expected it, then people are like, oh, yeah, listen to him, that kind of deal. But I've been on the Chuba train for a long time. going all the way back to last year, and I like Justice Hill. Justice is a tremendous player, but when Justice went down in the Bedlam game, and if you remember, Chuba had I think he had 3 touchdowns in that game, 2 or 3, and he had 104 yards rushing, taking over in the middle of the second quarter when Justice had the rib and the core injury. I've said since then I thought that Chuba would be better than Justice Hill, and I think, and even this summer at Ravens training camp, I heard Justice was asked about Chuba, and he told the media in Baltimore, "Oh, he'll be better than I am. I mean, he's better built, he's bigger, stronger, he's faster. I mean, Chuba's got all the tools." Here's the sad thing: this keeps going down the tracks the way I think it's going to go. This Chuba train. This Chuba train's heading to the NFL to this year because he's 3rd year out of high school eligible to go to the league. Humble, just a great kid. I mean, he's together. He knows who he is and he knows what he's going after. He's a great teammate. I was amazed how many guys, including Spencer and Bryce Bray, the redshirt freshman that started at offensive guard, right guard, all said that in the before the game in warm-ups or in the locker room, it was Chuba that came up to him and, "Hey man, it's okay, it's cool." I mean, and I meant to mention this on my radio show actually, today, but last year, you guys remember that TCU game in Fort Worth?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was awful. And in the locker room afterwards, Mike Gundy, when he was talking to the team, I mean, he put a few exclamation points on how awful it was. And then in that tone that I recognize because I've known Mike long enough, he said, "Anybody got anything to add?" And he said it like nobody better say a word. And because I knew the next line was, "Shower up and let's get the heck out of here." Well, Chuba goes, "Coach, I got something."
I'd like to see the look on Gundy's face.
Oh, no, you should have seen the look on my face because I'm over there going,
"Were you scared?"
No, Chuba, no, don't do this. Don't, Chuba. And he gets up and he goes, remember he had the drop pass at TCU scooped and scored on.
Right.
And he goes, "I want to tell everybody I let you down. I let my teammates down. I let everybody down, and it's never going to happen again." And he goes, "I know this. When I get home, I'm going to look in the mirror, and I'm going to ask myself, what can I do to be better? Because this isn't going to happen." He goes, I ask all of you, because I know a lot of you guys didn't play up to your abilities. Look in the mirror and ask yourself, what can I do to make this team better? And I'm over there going, wow, this is a redshirt freshman. And Gundy went from, he goes, "Chuba, that's good." I mean, even, Gundy softened a little bit right there. I mean, so I knew then he's going to be a leader. And he just followed through with it. I mean, he's been a leader all spring, all summer. And then before the game, Spencer gave him credit. Like I said, Bryce Bray. I asked Chuba yesterday, I said, "How many guys did you comfort before the game?" He goes, "I got around to all my guys. Told all my guys." Because everybody gets nervous before the first game. And so not is he only rushing for a ton of yards, but he's also like the team counselor. So it's a good deal.
Yeah. What interesting to me, Logan, and then we'll get to you, is, you saw the same thing with Justice Hill. You saw him play, and it's like he's going to improve, but you see talent. You saw that with Chuba Hubbard. And then Rob Glass does these things where these guys come back looking. They were athletic before, and then it just seems like their arms are twice the size. Now you got Chuba who can run. Obviously, he's fast. He's a sprinter, can get around the edge. He's not afraid to put his helmet down and put a linebacker on his back. So that's where you don't just have a fast guy, you have a tough runner in Chuba Hubbard as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't really add to anything you guys said. I think you guys pretty much nailed the kind of player he is. And unfortunately, I'm pretty sure Robert's right. This is probably close to the end of Chuba Hubbard here. But
yeah, I used to be different about this too, guy. I used to be, "Oh man, you need to stay in school," But I'm to the point now. If you go out there and have one of those seasons where the NFL wants you to come join them next year, you did everything you could for Oklahoma State or whatever school you're playing for. And that's, hey, why do you go to college? You go to college to get a good job. Well, if you're good enough in whatever you're doing that whatever wants to pay you a whole lot of money, and maybe even you didn't get that degree or finish your eligibility, you're accomplishing what you went to college for. So...
Right, but looking forward for the rest of the year, because I don't.
Tylan Wallace too, by the way.
Yeah.
He may be on that. He may be on that same incline.
Yeah. He's obviously probably not going to average 221 yards every game. What is his role going to be in the offense for you? Are they going to go to him 25 times a game, or?
Well, I do think this. I think the coaching staff feels like he's more durable than Justice was. And I think he is. No, I don't think you want to do that. And, there's a couple of things, and I know I'm jumping the ship here. There's a couple of things looking forward to this McNeese game that I think the Cowboys need to accomplish. One is because Desmond Jackson and Jamel Jeter, two other running backs, didn't play. They've held them out. They both had some camp injuries. Jeter had an ankle in a scrimmage, and Jackson came into camp with a stress fracture in his arm. They're both healthy, but they held them out at Oregon State, so they'll be completely healthy. And I think this is a week you check them out. LD had we showed it earlier. LD had a great, tough 5-yard touchdown run, but I don't think LD inspired confidence in the second team back yet. Yeah. So all those guys will compete. And this Micah Cooper walk-on that played some at Oregon State, in practice, he's the real deal. So I think that's one position against McNeese. Once you get the decisions kind of in the books, you need to look at all the other backs because you need to have a second and a third back option. And I don't know that they know who those guys are just yet.
Yeah, and just real quick, last year you came up with the Justice League for the running backs. Do you have another name like that? Anything clever yet?
No, I like the Chuba train.
It's hard to beat Justice League though.
Yeah,
that was good.
Yeah. It is hard to beat Justice League, and you don't need a nickname. Chuba's so good on its own. Just let Chuba stand.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Chuba Hubbard. Obviously, you talked about, especially Jeter. He's kind of guy kind of built like Chuba Hubbard in a way. So
Jackson's close to it too.
Yeah, I mean, what's incredible you mentioned about these McNeese State games is you have the ability that if you take care of business in the first half, you can get those guys reps, and that's where because practice, Mike Gundy's a smart guy. He's a head coach for a reason. They can figure those things out, but you can't beat live football against another team. So out of those guys, and it can be in the receiving core, the offensive line, is there a second-string guy that you feel like when they get in a game against a McNeese State, it's just going to blossom and you're going to go, oh, there's another one of those guys?
Oh, I think there's a lot. And there's another position that I think is, I don't want to say desperate, but it's pretty dire that you find some backups at linebacker. I don't know how much you'll get out of Calvin Bundage, if any, this year. It's a back injury. It goes all the way back to why he missed the bowl game. I just don't know. Now, even if he was completely healthy, Calvin Bundage, I would be starting Malcolm Rodriguez at linebacker because, you don't get the penalties. I mean, I hate to be mean, but you don't get the penalties, you don't get the missed assignments, and you get a lot of sure tackles with Malcolm Rodriguez. I think Malcolm Rodriguez is a tremendous football player. I'd like to have 11 of him. And then, I know the announcers didn't want to say it on television. You guys told me that, but Amen Ogbongbemiga, he's tremendous. And yet he was prime because they knew Devin Harper was nicked up. They worked him all spring and summer and said, look, you're going to be the guy at the middle linebacker. And he got himself ready and delivered. But behind those guys, Kevin Henry is now healthy. He'll play. Philip Redwine Bryant. And there's two freshmen, Nadrian Desider out of Evangel Christian in Shreveport and Cameron Farrar out of Dallas Skyline. If you can get those two guys in and get them in some real action, that might form you, three deep at each linebacker without even factoring Calvin Bundage.
And what about Israel Antwine? I know it's not a linebacker, but he's not healthy yet as well. The transfer from Colorado, where does he stand?
I think he'll play. I think there's a good chance he'll play this week. It's not a health issue. It's a personal situation. Has nothing to do with law enforcement. Has nothing to do with cheating on a test. I mean, it is. So he's good, but they need to clear that situation up. And once they do, he'll be ready to play, and he'll help. There's no doubt he'll help. But, one of the things, too, and I know we're kind of skipping and hopscotching here, one of the things they decided in fall camp on the defensive side was, you know what, we're going to play a lot of pups. I mean, I looked out there sometimes on guys, Samuele Tuihalamaka, Tyler Lacey, Jaden Jernigan, and, Brock Martin. I mean, you had all young guys, sometimes all freshmen, redshirt freshmen. But they made the decision in fall camp, the way we're going to combat the lack of experience, we're going to rotate and keep fresh legs in. So they kind of wear the offense, and you could see in this game, they kind of gradually wore the Oregon State offensive line down. That's the way they're going to try and do it. So the more the merrier, and getting Antwine in there, who does have some experience from starting 11 games at Colorado as a true freshman, that'll only help.
Yeah, real quick before we have to go to commercial, we haven't really touched on the receiving core yet. What did you think of obviously Tylan Wallace had a monster game, didn't break the 100-yard mark, but I don't think that'll be a problem later on in the year. What did you think of the receivers in this game?
I thought they played really well. Tylan, they were giving Tylan a lot of extra attention until Chuba banged him over the head enough that they realized, we better worry about stopping the run. Things loosened up on Tylan, and he made some plays. I thought Landon Wolf was exceptional. I thought Dylan Stoner played well. And then how about the grad transfer, Jordan McRae from South Alabama? The knock on him was he's not physical enough. He climbs the ladder, catches that first ball, and gets knocked out of his back, falls backwards, and pops up like, it's no big deal. And then also saw him make a few blocks. And I know, good. I saw that one means I got 1 minute here. We hadn't talked about the offensive line. I know when I watched it back Sunday, it was like, whoa. So when Mike Gundy said Monday, that's the highest an offensive line's graded in a game since he's been the coach, it didn't shock me. They were moving Oregon State in unison. They've gone to a lot of G plays where they're loading the point of attack. Some of that is Gundy, some of that is Gleason, and some of that is Charlie Dickey. But the thing that got me the most was the downfield blocks. I mean, on that Tylan Wallace quick pass, that's Tevin Jenkins down knocking a safety down.
That's
the right tackle.
That's
awesome.
A lot of human moving down the field.
That is awesome.
Get out of the way.
Yeah, and Johnny
Wilson.
Johnny Wilson had the seal block on the middle linebacker on the big Chuba run, the third quarter. And then Bryce Bray's down there making blocks downfield too on some of those Chuba runs. So, this offensive line, give him a lot of credit.
Not an easy task for Johnny Wilson, by the way, moving a 377-pound
had a good day
defensive tackle, and you really didn't see.
And only one holding penalty, and he really didn't need to have it.
Yeah, I mean, I was impressed, obviously, for Coach Dickey's performance as the offensive line coach. They seem to be very impressive. We're going to take a quick break, come back and talk about what happened defensively, and look forward to McNeese State right back on 1-on-1 right after this.
Because of Cass, I'm more confident behind the camera.
Because of Cass, I have found lifelong friends and amazing mentors.
Because of Cass, I will be able to teach English in Cambodia with the Peace Corps.
Because of Cass, I had the opportunity to intern on Capitol Hill.
Because of Cass, I got to sing at the Vatican.
Because of Cass, I was able to present my research and I won a scholarship for it.
Because of Cass, I miss Black OSU.
Because of Cass, I can help someone else find their voice.
Because of Cass, I'm able to not only have 1, but 2 internships for the summer lined up already.
Because of Cass, I am confident in leadership positions.
Because of Cass, I'm excited for my future and the opportunities I have within my major.
Because of Cass, I can do it, and so can you.
When everything is on the line, one person can change the game. One swing of the bat, one perfect pass, one leaping catch. In the most important moments, one play, one person can make the difference. This is your moment. Your opportunity to change the game for our student athletes. Will you sit on the sidelines? Or will you be a game changer? Join the posse today. Call 405-744-7301 or log on to okstateposse.com. Be a game changer.
I've had a lifetime of little sweet pieces of special. And I just want them to know I love them.
The Cancer Center at Stillwater Medical, the heart of cancer care.
Welcome back into One-on-One. Reed Spencer, Logan Mosier, joined by OSU insider Robert Allen. A lot of good talk so far. McNeese State just a couple of days away for the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Impressive 52-36 win over Oregon State now almost 5 days ago. It feels like it was yesterday. The defense, the first 2 drives was not good. I mean, and Oregon State, people kind of, on Oregon State. They're a bad Power 5 team, but as you said, offensively, they're a good football team. Jonathan Smith at Washington was a smart offensive mind. They're not a terrible offensive football team. But those first 2 drives, Oklahoma State's young defensive line got punched in the mouth.
They did.
It was bad. And then after that second drive, it seemed like there was more of a cohesive unit on that up front, but the secondary kind of struggled the entire game. So what is your summary of the defensive performance from Friday night?
Well, let's start up front. Yeah, the young guys. We talked about playing a lot of guys, doing it by committee. There were some things I liked. Like you said, the first 2 series. And here's another thing. That offensive line for Oregon State, they're big, and they came into that with 92 starts. Oklahoma State came in with 80. So Oregon State's even a more veteran offensive line coming in, and you got all that experience going against all that youth. I mean, here's the crazy thing. Oklahoma State, forget having a returning starter. Oklahoma State did not have a returning start in the front 7 except Malcolm Rodriguez, and those were all at safety. So they had never had a player that started in the front 7 start in this game. So, and the defensive line didn't have anybody back, period, with a returning start. So, I kind of, again, you guys asked, did you expect it? Yeah, I kind of expected it. I think the defensive line, because of the youth, has a chance to get better. Now, you mentioned the secondary. I went back and watched every one of the big pass plays because I wanted to see what was going on. The first touchdown, which was wide, they moved Hodgins, their top guy, Isaiah Hodgins, into the slot, and Oklahoma State didn't compensate. Now, Jarek Bernard has got good cover skills. He's the top cover safety, and he had the coverage, but Hodgins beat him on a double move, and it was a big play. He was wide open. You look at every pass they hit was either an exchange route where 2 receivers exchanged and the Cowboys didn't do a good job of – it's like basketball, switch or don't switch, or double moves. And gosh knows, double moves around here have been beating Oklahoma State. Got to get better on the double moves. They did a dig and go in the second half that went for big yards. But I also thought the Cowboys were on their heels. They played a lot of soft coverage. And I think that's because Jim Knowles didn't want Jameer Jefferson to go nuts. That's really the one way Oregon State could have won the game is if they establish the run and keep running and score with it and keep the ball away from the Oklahoma State offense. And that meant Jameer Jefferson had to go for 221 like Chuba did. Yeah. Instead, he went for 80 and change. So mission accomplished, but yeah, I'd like to see the secondary play more aggressive because I think A.J. Green and Rodarius Williams, I really do believe they're good corners. But I believe they're better when they're playing aggressive. Either tight man or man press is what those 2 guys I think do best.
Yeah, and you mentioned one of the guys that moved from safety to linebacker, Malcolm Rodriguez, and he was a guy we talked about over and over again about how good he was last year. I believe he was the second leading tackler on the team last year. How important was it for him or to have him in that front 7 just so, some starting experience there?
I mean, we were watching coming out of the break. It was the Malcolm and Amen show. Amen, Malcolm. Amen. I mean, that's what the announcers, and that's the other thing. You keep telling me they didn't want to say Agbonbamiga. Just say amen. Amen is good, man. I can live with that. But no, your comment about not only does Malcolm Rodriguez make a lot of tackles, he's very athletic. He's a former wrestler, which gives him good hands to keep guys off of him. He's 215 pounds. That's big enough to play the outside linebacker position. Not ideal. You'd like to be 220, 225. But the other thing is he knows what everybody's supposed to do on the defense.
He is smart.
So if there's a misalignment up front, he can tap that defensive lineman, get him in the right spot, if Amen or one of the safeties forgets what their responsibility is, he can tell them. They do game shows on Thursday or Friday on the game plan. Like, either like a Jeopardy or like What's My Line or Wheel of Fortune or whatever, all these different game shows. And the defensive backs were all bummed out when he moved to linebacker because they've been winning constantly because he can answer all the questions. Now he's answering them for the linebackers. Now the linebackers are like, yeah, we're going to win. We're going to win these games, So.
Yeah, obviously, Levi, the show we do at night, I mean, he was having a meltdown over the defense. And I'm with you. It's like the soft coverage. Oklahoma State knew we're just trying to get out of here. Let's get to the bus. We can score at will. It was obvious Spencer Sanders and Chuba Hubbard were getting anything they wanted. So I don't look at the yards allowed for Oregon State, and you don't want to have a heart attack. Like, it's okay to allow 36 points because as long as you have 37, all that matters is you're 1-0 leaving Corvallis. So in that second half, I wasn't happy at with the first two drives, but you kind of look at it and you're saying, well, I mean, that's like Logan and I, trying to do a show with Bob Costas. Who's going to be better? Well, he's got more experience. He knows what he's doing. So sure, they got punched in the mouth, but I like the resiliency for that front line to only allow 87 yards from a freshman All-American. And the secondary gave up some big plays. But if I'm frustrated, I know those guys aren't going to watch film with Jim Knowles and be happy about it. So it was week 1. You don't have a preseason. All things considered, it wasn't great, but it could have been a lot worse.
No, and you know what? A year ago, the defense was doing a lot of the same stuff. I mean, we've already mentioned it once, so let's just bring it up again. The TCU game last year. TCU was playing with a third or fourth team quarterback.
Yeah, Grayson Muhlstein.
And guys that, they were beat up all over the place. And that was a defense full of upperclassmen that let TCU and Rager break plays and go up and down the field. So, no, this defense has got a chance to improve. I like the enthusiasm of the young players. I like the older guys in the secondary that I think will be better as they are allowed to get more aggressive because that's kind of the way they want to play. And we look at the next 2 weeks.
So is that
McNeese and Tulsa? Mm-hmm. If McNeese and Tulsa are putting up big numbers offensively, then we can all come back here and go, we can get Levi out here and pull our hair out and all that stuff. But right now I'm not panicked. I kind of want to let these guys mature and get better the next couple of games.
So is that the key for you then? Let them be more aggressive across the board?
In the back end.
Okay.
And really particularly with the corners. I mean, I tell you what, in this day and age, do you guys find any corners that like to play 15 yards off the receiver? Nobody.
No.
They either want to be 5 off or if you give them their first choice, they want to be in their grill and press man and get physical. And you're talking about 6 foot and 6'1", I think. AJ's 6'1", and Rodarius is 6 foot. Those are big corners. They don't, now if they're 5'9", 5'10", back them off and let them play that way. But these guys want to get in the grill and they want to push around, and that's the way they play in the big league on Sundays in the NFL. These guys want to show they can play press man, and I think both of them are pretty good at it.
Well, and you're playing in a conference where you can have a good game and you give up a couple touchdowns, and it's like, hey, that was a great performance. The Big 12. I get Oregon State won the Big 12, but some of those, especially Isaiah Hodgins, even though he is one of the better wide receivers in the Pac-12, you don't want 9 receptions, 170 yards, and for 2 scores. You don't want that, but it is week 1. You're in a weird place at Oregon State. I mean,
yeah, and let me throw this out there. I mean, nobody wants excuses, especially from a team that won. That was a hard trip. That's not an easy trip. You know what? What that trip proved to me, unless you are going to be in a division, because a few years ago, this is what we thought was going to happen. Unless you're going to be in a division with the 2 Arizona schools, a couple of Big 12 schools that go with you, and maybe Colorado and Utah, and that's your division, you don't want to go to the Pac-12. You don't want to play on Pacific time zones, and you don't want to go all the way up to Corvallis and Pullman and Seattle and Eugene and those places, because those are hard. You know what it made me have a greater respect for? West Virginia. West Virginia has a hard deal because they have to come over here so many times. Those are not easy trips on your team or your kids.
Well, no, and and I'm not this again. You don't want to sound super negative about Oregon State. I'm sure they did all as accommodating that they could.
Oh no, it's a nice place. But it's tough.
How are you a Power 5 university and you can't land a 737 there? I don't understand. I don't know the circumstances or Corvallis for the university, but how are you a Power 5 program? Stillwater, America is not exactly the utopia of big cities, but there's an airport not very far away that can land big planes.
Oh, it's right here.
No one has to get on a bus. I know Boise State stayed a little bit further away when they were here, but.
Well, what Stillwater doesn't have is there's not a hotel here other than the Atherton where the team stays in Union. And I think there is one other if the teams would take it. But you have most teams staying. Actually, you know where they're all going to stay now. Have you guys been down to Covell in Edmond? There's a Hilton down there with a convention center right there at the edge of I-35 in Covell, far north Edmond. Mm-hmm. That's where all the visiting teams are staying this year. So
it's about what, a 40-minute drive?
About a 40-minute drive. So that's a bummer. And
well, you don't care when you're the home team.
and see, that was the other thing. Even if you could land the plane in Corvallis,
couldn't stay there.
There was no hotel in town that has the catering and the meeting space for a team. There's some schools. Georgia makes sure nobody builds one in Athens. They want everybody to stay in Atlanta and have that drive. So, it sometimes plays in for the home team. But I will say this. I mean, I know it's off the topic. We stayed in Eugene at the Graduate was the name of the hotel. And by the way, I went over to the Oregon campus, walked around. Their facilities are unbelievable. Plus,
it's almost like Nike has something.
Yeah. Plus, the Animal House landmarks were special for me. I mean, I went to Dean Wormer's office.
Guess what I am now.
Oh, it was awesome. But no, the Graduate, the hotel, had all this Nike stuff and all this Animal House stuff, and it was one of the cooler hotels we've stayed in.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably. I mean, I've been to Washington. I've never been to Oregon, but I'm sure it was a great trip.
Oh, it's beautiful too. It's beautiful up there. So, but it is a long, hard trip.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, come back and talk about. Obviously, McNeese State is coming to Stillwater and everything else going in the Big 12. Make Robert make some of his picks. Here, we'll be right back after this.
Hey everyone, Chris Notch with the O'Colly Media Group. Today I'll be showing you how to register for the Big 12 Pick'em Challenge. So to start off with, you will get to your web browser and type in contest.ocolly.com. Once you are there, you will click register. For those that have already done this before with our March Madness challenge that we had in last March here, it's the exact same thing when you set up. So you do display name, your email address, password, and then of course your contact info. Contact info, of course, is to make sure that we have a way to get in touch with you if you win. Of course, we are currently working on getting some prizes set up so that we'll have a winner each week. And then also at the bottom, you can select if you're interested in receiving email updates from the challenge, and then if you want emails about some of the contests that we're doing. So you'll click register. Once you're here in the dashboard, in the home screen, you can go down and you can see that we have two experts so far. We do have two more as well that are going to be on here as well. Madison Morris is from the franchise and covers Oklahoma State, and Frank Bonner of the Tulsa World. And then joining them will be Jordan Bishop of the Stillwater News Press and Jordan King from Triple Play Sports Radio. So then you can see how they pick as well, how the experts are going to be picking. As you can see, when I go to my picks, which is where you make your picks, there's 2 Oklahoma State games. Of course, you will pick the 9:30 p.m., not a.m. We're working on getting that resolved. If you want to see past stats from both teams, you can go right here, and it'll show you everything that you need for stats if you want to compare it that way. And then we also have your bonus game, kind of the game of the week, that you will predict the score for the final one of that. And then what you will also do week 2, as you can see, you can't make all your picks at once because we're going week by week. It'll tell you when it opens so you can make your picks. The experts should have their picks in by Wednesday. They're due on Wednesday, so experts should have their picks sometime by Wednesday. Should all be in. And then, of course, you have your standings up here, your news. You can kind of keep track of any Big 12 news that is there. So that is how you register and can kind of run through the contest for the Big 12. Also, if you want, you click on the icon here and you can make a jersey for yourself as well. Also, for our NFL one, it'll be the exact same way. The website will just be different, so it's just going to be propick'em.ocali.com, and that will be the same way to register, and then you can pick against all the NFL teams that are scheduled for that week. So that is how you register. We hope you join. Hope you have a lot of fun. Let us know if you have any questions. Thanks, guys.
Welcome back into one-on-one. It's now time to really get into McNeese State. Obviously, we didn't have you last week, Robert. You were out in Oregon, so we kind of had to backtrack and go over that game. So next week will obviously be pretty Tulsa-heavy. But McNeese State, with all due respect, you would expect the Cowboys to go and get a victory. But an interesting storyline, Cody Orgeron, that's a familiar last name for a lot of people in college football. What, if there was something to be scared of for McNeese State, what do they do offensively that could trick Jim Knowles and the Cowboys?
I tell you, my boy can run the ball, he can pass the ball. Go Tigers. Go Tigers. And if I wasn't down in Austin, Texas, worried about beating them Longhorns, I'd be up there in Stillwater watching my boy Cody.
Spot on.
That was good.
Spot
All right. No, Cody Orgeron, he's a great story. He was a tennis player in high school that wanted to play football. He walked on at McNeese, worked his way up, and last year as a junior, became a part-time quarterback, playing some, got a couple of starts. Now he's the starter. I guess he's a junior now. He was a sophomore a year ago. But, he's definitely a point guard type quarterback. He needs to get the ball in somebody else's hands for them to be explosive. Cody's not going to do it on his own. Siren Sutton is a little 5'10", 180-pound speedster of a receiver. He's probably their best big play receiving threat. And then Justin Pratt, the running back, is serviceable. Here's the, have you ever heard this? Games are won in the trenches. Well, the offensive line for McNeese averages about 6'3.5" and about 278 pounds.
Good luck.
Whew.
That's not that's not very big. I mean, bigger than you, but the OSU offensive line by comparison averages 6'4.5", 304. So they're that's offensive line to offensive line, but their defensive line is even smaller. They've got one big nose, and then after that, average about 250, 240. This is going to be a big load for them in the line at the line of scrimmage. Oklahoma State should own the line of scrimmage. That's why, and it may be a little bit of a false read, guys, but that's why I expect the defensive line to play much better this week against McNeese. And then on offense, I mean,
how many yards is Chuba going to run for if they played like they did last week?
You know what? If McNeese comes in and plays good, Chuba can still name his number, depending on how long Mike Gundy wants to watch it.
Right.
I think Chuba will probably get. My guess is somewhere in the mid ones, 150, 160, and then probably by then it'll be enough of a decision they get him out. And that's what I said. This game. I know I read a column this week from one of the columnists in the state that's very respected that these games should not be played. I call, big B, capital S on that. These kids want to play in stadiums like this. It's a great memory for them. I know really getting their butt kicked is a great memory.
Well, I would encourage that columnist to explain Georgia State to me then.
Well, Georgia State in the Big 12 last week, Northern Iowa. James Madison was within a touchdown of West Virginia. Mm-hmm. Nickel State nearly upset the Mad Hatter.
Indiana State.
Indiana State. What did I say there?
Nichols. They played Kansas State.
Nichols played Kansas State, and they didn't do so well. You're right. They beat Kansas a year ago. Yeah. Anyway, and those checks help them not only have a football program, those checks help all their other sports as well in their budget. And then on top of that, this game has, if you handle it the way you're supposed to, this game has a ton of value for Oklahoma State. Now you can play your depth, and it stretched those guys. We talked about running back and linebacker being crucial. Getting the backup offensive line snaps is good. And then here's the other thing that I think is pretty important. If you do it really right in the fourth quarter late, now you're playing walk-ons, guys that normally would never play. Okay, they run out there. Their mommies and daddies and girlfriends get excited. And now these are the kids that play on your scout team. Well, guess what? Coach played me. He gave me a chance to play big-time college football. So guess what? Every day of the week, I'm going to bust my tail and make sure I'm the best scout teamer I can be. The attitude of your team when everybody gets a chance to play in a game like this goes way up. It's a huge momentum boost for your entire team, especially those guys that otherwise wouldn't get to play. So, Barry Trammell, got to disagree. You know, these games are valuable.
When you make when you have an opinion like that, you need to have an alternative, because these games, I mean, they have to be played somewhere or another. Because you think Florida in Week 0 against Miami wish they would have had a warm-up game against McNeese State? Absolutely. They sucked. They found a way to win the game, but it was mistake after mistake. The NFL wants to do away with preseason, but they're going to at least keep 2 games and find an alternative.
And here's another thing on this deal. I'm not saying play 3 of these games. I would be totally against that. I never liked Bill Snyder's scheduling. I don't like what Baylor's doing this year. They're playing 3 easy opponents. I believe you should do what Mike Gundy is trying to do and what Chad Weiberg, the deputy athletic director over there, is scheduling. You know, Oregon's coming up, Arizona State's coming up, Arkansas's coming up. Play 1 Division I, Power 5, good team. Play 1 group of 5, and play 1 FCS. That's a perfect non-conference schedule.
Yeah, and you mentioned the value you get from all the guys playing. What does it matter to the coaches in terms of what they can bring out in the playbook? Do they try and get tricky with some stuff? Do they keep it pretty vanilla?
No, I'd say for the most part you keep it vanilla, but some coaches, and I think Sean Gleason is probably in this category. He'll throw some things out there that they probably aren't going to do the rest of the year. But if you throw it out in one game, the other team has to work on it every week of the season thinking maybe it'll show up. That's why I love using the option again, which they used in the Oregon State game. They're going to use that. Mike Gundy thinks they've got the talent to do some, but they're going to do it maybe 2-3 plays a game.
Right.
Well, now the other team's defense, because option is hard to defend, they have to spend a lot of practice time on getting ready for that.
And one question I wanted to ask you is, watching this game, obviously Mike Gundy is the judge and jury on what goes with Oklahoma State football. So you didn't see it. You probably saw a little bit more run game here without Mike Yurcich now at Ohio State. But when is there going to be a game where you're absolutely watching it going, that ain't Mike Yurcich with Sean Gleason? I didn't feel like I got that totally in Oregon State. Will there be a moment, or is this Oklahoma State's offense?
No, you'll get some Sean Gleason, but you had a little Sean Gleason in last Friday. It's also Mike Gundy, and it's also Charlie Dickey. Like I said, the G blocking, either onside guard or both guards pulling. That's stuff that Gleason did a lot at Princeton. Oklahoma State really hadn't done it since Mike Gundy called plays in the late, last decade, right before Dana Holgerson got to town. And Charlie Dickey, they've done a lot of that up at Kansas State. So there are going to be things, but to expect. You aren't talking about the 2 quarterbacks in the formation at the same time, are you?
No, I'm not talking about that.
Although I think you may see that at some point. That's a Princeton deal.
You mentioned Mike Gundy.
You got 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah, calling the plays. It seems like an eternity ago in that when they went with Des Bryant, Zach Robinson, and went up there to Columbia, and Mike Gundy was on the sideline. I mean, the entire game on sitting there, and now how far they've come to we're talking about offensive coordinators. Because I think Gundy was miserable, not calling plays, but he couldn't really be a head coach.
No.
And now you look here to 2019.
And you know what? I think you just hit on a period of time that I think this offense is really going to resemble. I think if you're a Cowboy fan with a memory, go back to 2008, 2009 with Zach Robinson at quarterback, Zach was capable of doing. Kendall Hunter, and again, Chuba's a different back than Kendall. And then, again, Tylan Wallace is different than Des Bryant. But that's the style of offense that I think you're going to feel this year will resemble.
I'm going to run through some Big 12 games for you here, Robert. Last week was not a great week for the conference, but they did end up getting a lot of wins. Bowling Green at Kansas State.
I think Kansas State wins it, but I think Bowling Green will give them a better test than what Nichols did.
Oh, West Virginia struggles with James Madison. We know Kelly Bryant and the Tigers went up to Wyoming, and that was not so successful, but that's an interesting matchup. I would probably take Mizzou in that one, but where do you stand?
Mizzou,
UTSA, Baylor.
That's one of those Baylor cupcakes. They got nothing but 3 cupcakes in non-conference.
And I know OU's shaking in their boots over South Dakota, but I'm going to go ahead out on a limb and say the Sooners might win that one.
I think OU wins that one. Let me tell you something about South Dakota, North Dakota State, and South Dakota State. Found this out last week for my son. The cost of attendance stipend schools can now give out. Most FCS teams don't give one out, or if they do, it's very small because they can't afford it. Not those 4. Those 4 are paying as much as the SEC.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder how long that can last.
Well, and that's why they keep getting good players at those places, especially North Dakota State, who keeps winning the championship. So,
Coastal Carolina 0-1, taking on Les Miles. He's not great in week 1, but week 2?
Yeah, and I think I would have thought about picking Coastal Carolina. They got misplaced by the hurricane. They've been on the run all week. It's going to wear them out. I think Kansas gets win number 2.
This is a big one. Number 6 LSU at number 9 Texas. Ed Orgeron, Tom Herman. How's this shake out for you?
I don't know how Cody's going to do in Stillwater. I don't think he has much of a chance up there. Although, hey, go Cowboys. No, go Cowboys. McNeese Cowboys. But, no, we'll take care of them Longhorns. Tom Herman may be a genius, but, hey, go Tigers.
It's gonna be a fun game down there in
Am
Austin.
I going to get in trouble for doing that? Okay.
Nah.
Good,
From anyone
good.
here.
Okay.
UTEP, Texas Tech. Alan Bowman was big time in week 1. UTEP probably going to be much the same story.
You know what? Texas Tech's scary. I watched that game, a lot of that game. They're pretty good. And Kansas State was better than I thought. Those are the 2 new coaches that I thought did really well.
Well, thank you, Robert, for coming on. Obviously, we'll be back on Wednesday. You'll be back on Friday. You'll be back on Wednesday. Be sure to get out to Boone Pickens Stadium and watch the Cowboys take on McNeese State at 6 o'clock. We'll see you Friday.